Something that you may progressively realize as the seconds tick by and life moves on is how much our greatest fears are rooted in the concept of change. We become comfortable with what's normal, and the second that normalcy, conformity, and routine cracks, for better or for worse, that's what creates real fear. June 4th, 2022 was the day I received my high school diploma. It was also the day I learned to strongly dislike the person I was when I walked through my school's halls. But strangely, it was a day that scared me unlike any other. Despite how ready I was to rip the immature, unaccountable, unprepared part of me away for good, our greatest fears are rooted in the concept of change. I was terrified that a successful transition into a university setting would tear away the one thing I couldn't afford to lose, a community-driven spark to spend nearly every day pushing others and myself to a never-visible finish line of personal progression. Eventually, times changed, priorities shifted, and the normalcy cracked. And I've never been more thankful.
Kicks him outside to the right side of the field, but he snags him with the forward air, and he actually takes the game. Oh!
Blind boy beat the outcome here. Popping up the last time.
Oh,
One second. Taking first place at Classy
Trying to
Land.
get the follow-up with the grenade there, and
there's the up there.
getting the reverse 3-0. Amazing work from Ben Flying
Watching it from
Boy.
the scene.
The weird DI on that Nikita, meaning Ben Flying Boy is going to be your Millennium Champion.
Back in high school, I was a 7-time varsity athlete. 3 of my high school years were spent on varsity cross country, and all 4 were spent on varsity track. I loved the environment, I loved the people I had to push me, and I loved being a part of a community of students that I can compete and improve with. But when my time was up, how was I possibly going to replicate that one positive influence that gave me something from back then to look at fondly? It turns out, I couldn't have possibly imagined how many people had asked that exact question before me. University student organizations have always provided a new sense of community for incoming students who wanted to find the right new people for them. But some of the best student organizations are the ones that are able to provide that loving community while scratching the participants' itch to fight and develop. Before I could even blink, top 4 runner on boys cross country became top 4 Smash Ultimate player at UW Stout's Blue Devil Smash. By now, I have won 27 BDS tournaments across many different fighting games, and on December 13th, 2025, I achieved my 15th bracket win in Smash Ultimate, which set an all-time club record. BDS's loving community and access to personal development is what made that possible. All of this led me to something that I thought was gone forever. Student organized competition led me right back into an athletics program. I started playing Smash at a university level in my sophomore year. Sure, it looked very different, but this was experience that showed me that the leader that cross-country Ben was never left. The workhorse that track Ben was never left. And the community that Ben loved had never left. But once you wear the cap, these specific communities don't become as accessible as they once were. As I prepare to leave my university life in a similar manner to how I exited my education before it, I wanted to dig into the heads of people like me to find how unique kinds of organized competition within student organizations has allowed them to feel similar fulfillment to what I felt, and how those organizations are able to do it.
Typically, the competitive experience at BDS is every single Saturday they host a singles tournament as well as a couple extra ones, but I'm typically competing in the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate singles tournaments and playing in that, so it's double elimination, standard bracket, and usually anywhere between 20 to 30, sometimes even 40 players, so it's a good competition, great space for people, and just really fun to get out there, play the game I love with people I like talking to.
So our last president gave me a whole spreadsheet with everything, and she gave me the contacts for all the different club teams that are around. We only had 3, which was St. Thomas, River Falls, and Stevens Point. So it works, but it also takes a bit because these clubs are also ran by the presidents as well. So sometimes communication does take a while, but at the end of the day, thankfully games happen. So.
I would say our club is really there for people who either haven't played soccer before and they're just trying it out and they really like the low-keyness of the club, or they tried varsity. It was a lot, because that is a lot. You have a very, very busy, very rigorous schedule, and we have practice twice a week. So I feel like it's definitely just for people who are looking for a more simplified version of what the club would be if we didn't practice 5 days a week and travel on the weekends.
Vex starts off by giving us a game every year. We work throughout the year to design, build, test our robots, prototype, design, go through the engineering process through it all. And then near the end of our season, we go to regional competitions against either 50 universities, 100 universities when we go to Worlds. And we compete in a bracket format in order to win a regional championship in order for a ticket to those orbits.
The first year we didn't do Vex robotics at all. It was mostly just casual robotics, mainly just building we made a small car that first year. And the second year is when we started the Vex U program within Blue Devil Robotics. And that third year, the beginning, that's when I became president of the club.
And Vex is like that big league, right?
Correct, yeah, that's what we build our lots to compete.
So, yeah, it was all, we train and everything in the gym. We get together and we have meetings speaking about what we're gonna do next and how we want to approach it. But yeah, and it was every 6 months to a year, there would be different competitions. And this is where you really felt as an individual, that's where the focus was, is that you could pick and choose what competitions we were going to. It wasn't that the whole team had to compete at each single one. Everyone would pick one a year or 6 months down the line, give or take, and say, yeah, I'm gonna lift at this one and here's where I'm gonna be by that time. Those were our goals kind of set.
Being able to sit down with these people was very eye-opening. In our own unique ways, we had all used our competitive environments to further ourselves as people, create strong bonds, and spread the community we loved, all while setting quality goals for ourselves that reached out beyond a classroom. With me and Sam, for example, sure, we were in a club where we competed against each other playing video games, but there were far greater meanings and purposes to the video games we were playing that required significant commitment and care. The same logic applies to the people who have felt similar meaning from just playing soccer, just lifting heavy, or just building robots that I had the privilege of talking to.
Actually, before BDS and coming to UW Stout in 2023, I've been active in the Minnesota Super Smash Bros. Community since around about 2020. So I've been competing for about 6 years now and going to tournaments, having those connections, and I think that translates really well to Blue Devil Smash's community as well as just the Wisconsin community as a whole. So ever since really moving out here for school, I have been more involved with the Wisconsin crew rather than the Minnesota crew. So going out to Madison or Milwaukee or these different events that are further on the other side, I'm much more involved with the state I'm currently in. And it's kind of interesting to see how each different state has its own community, going from Minnesota's community to Wisconsin's community. So I think it opens up a great opportunity for people that are coming from a Smash Bros. Background and really just getting comfortable in this space for the first time, or people that have been in the Smash Bros. Space before, and having that sense of community even when you end up leaving your hometown is a really great opportunity, and I think Blue Devil Smash does that very well. I think all of these different clubs can really be boiled down to like-minded people that want to do what you're doing and have that social space to be able to develop that further. And whether you are one of the top 5 players at a competitive event like Blue Devil Smash, or you just kind of come every week because you like talking to the people and you like catching up, it really develops those friend groups and a sense of community. And I think that is at least for me, a big personal drive of being able to see these people who I would call my friends and want to hang out with more, and having that space that's already dedicated to socializing and everyone meeting once a week will keep people coming in and keep me coming in for sure too.
This was the first ever club that I officially joined. There are a few clubs that I was really interested in, but I never really went to their meetings. This year, I've taken more an accountability of actually going to clubs that I'm interested in. And of course, there's always, first and foremost, like, some of my friends are in them, so that's why I mainly go. But I also get to meet a lot of other people and just hear their experiences or why they're interested in these sort of things. And I like to get to know new people as well, so it's always great to have that social connection with other people. Like, your friends might know someone and then you get introduced to them, and then you guys become friends pretty quickly.
So the soccer club was the first club that I really got myself involved in, and similar to Kay, I did not really get into any other clubs until this year. Freshman year, I was so swamped with just kind of getting my schedule in check and figuring out what I needed to do. But I think the biggest part that I've taken from the clubs that I'm in is just really like peer outreach, and I get to meet new people every time I go there. We learn about new things. Like for my early childhood association, we learn about more lesson planning techniques, and it's a great way to meet the people who are interested in the same things that you are.
What are the different kinds of team building exercises that you guys practice in the club?
So the different types of team practices that we do, obviously, is our normal standard practices out on the field. Just having a plan of different drills that we'll go through, and we always end up with goalie work to help hone their skills better. And then sometimes we do like to host outside events to where we get to do a little team bonding. So last semester, we had a string friendship bracelet making night before we went to practice. We also played some Mario Kart and other variety of video games just to kind of sit back, eat some snacks, get to know each other a lot better too, and become more of a family as a team.
And I definitely do feel like we really bonded this last semester. Like, we really all became close friends. Like Kay said, when we're on the field, we are practicing, but we're also it's not like rigorous practicing the entire time we're at practice. It's more of, let's relax, let's have fun, but let's also get some work done, and let's also practice this and the practices. We had music going, and we were dancing around and while we were playing and having fun, laughing, giggling with each other, and it was just a lot of fun.
So cooperative games, there's been research that's found that it's actually really beneficial for understanding other people, especially if we're working with folks who have different identity characteristics than ourselves. So we tend to learn that empathy piece a bit more and find more understanding when we work together with somebody else. In that space of competition, oftentimes you're working on a team, and so you get the bonding from the team dynamic with those individuals that you're working with towards the goal of defeating the other team in a competition.
I came into Still with the intention of starting a VEX program within the robotics thing, but there was not really a lot of pushback with it, but it just didn't seem like the people in the club currently were super on board with it. I had the pitch, but it just didn't land. And that's kind of where it was do I keep trying for this or what do I do? So that first year I didn't do VEX at all. That second year decided to hit the ground running, and then it just took off from there.
I know in that first couple years of robotics, it was always a question of, all right, can we actually develop a VEX team? Are we able to actually accomplish that? Because there's so many different variables with it, between how many team members do you have the involvement, as well as do you have the funding in order to actually accomplish that?
Many of these meanings and purposes stem from the establishment and support of community. Community is the fuel for every student organization, and that dynamic is especially prevalent in competition. Competition has a very simple set of goals. Push yourself, push others, and be better than you were previously, and be better than your opponent. This simple concept makes competitive student orgs have a very easy in for new driven members of a community or student body. Unlike the appeal of a casual community, competitive communities create strong relationships between people built on a foundation that makes them push each other. I knew I needed that in my life after high school, which caused me and many other high schoolers to pursue these collegiate communities before their diplomas even came.
With BDS, typically, I have been involved since my freshman year, so 3 years now. Technically, I was involved my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I made the trip out because I'm from Eagan, Minnesota, so only about an hour trip, and made my way out to just kind of introduce myself and see the crowd. But I've been actively going ever since my freshman year, and it's been a great experience, and I plan on going until my senior year.
I remember that bracket. You beat me that day.
It was a fun bracket for sure. A lot of old faces, a lot of familiar faces as well, but it was a smaller one. It's nice to see even from that one how much it's grown into space.
Yeah.
And that was like a 10, 15 person bracket, and now we're averaging like 20 to 30. So it's really cool to see that.
I think there was like a nice little bit of storytelling there too, because it's like, oh, we played this one-off set, and like, oh, well, I'm sure we'll get a few more of those.
Right? It started a rivalry for
Yeah.
sure, and that's really exciting.
So I first got involved actually my freshman year. Even before I came here when school started, I was working in the HR department, and I was looking through the clubs, and I saw it on the Connect page. And I loved soccer, and I knew it was a great opportunity, so I got to meet with them, and that was when I officially first joined them, was Backyard Bash, and then went to their first few practices, and I stuck with them.
I did not find out about them until Backyard Bash. In fact, about a week or so before Backyard Bash, I told my roommate I was not doing soccer because I didn't know we had a club team and I didn't want to do varsity. So I came across them at Backyard Bash. I was like, oh, maybe I am doing soccer actually. And yeah, that was first semester freshman year, and I've stuck with them ever since.
So did you say that you were familiar with Women's Soccer Club before you became a student?
Yeah, I kind of read up on them through Connect, and I reached out to them asking if it wasn't too late to join, to which Tiara, her and Matt run the whole club sports teams. They had reached back out to me saying, oh, here's the contact information. So our president at the time, Addie Spaeth, contacted me back saying I could meet them at Backyard Bash to answer any questions I had. And yeah, rest is history.
That's interesting because we now have 2-for-2 interviews so far in this project that have consisted of people who have been involved in the club or aware of the club in some capacity before they were even students. Last interview I shot was with one of my friends in BDS, and he went to one of our tournaments back when he was still in high school. I did that same thing when I first toured Stout for the first time and stuff. I think it's interesting to see all of these people come to Stout and know that they're going to be at Stout and then find their club involvement before they even show up that competitive environment.
It's very interesting how people, when they're very interested in something and they know that they want to continue, even if it's not a varsity sport or something like that, they still look and see those opportunities and take them.
What was the standard competitive experience at Blue Devil Lifting?
Yeah, kind of touched on it. It's what I was kind of expecting going into it was that whole team aspect where, hey, we're all here to compete for the best numbers and do our best. But the coaches really quickly locked in on the fact that everyone is at a different place, and where you want to see growth is just within yourself. It doesn't matter if you're breaking records or you're bringing the most points home for the team. The competitive sense was back to that you versus yourself. You just want to do better than what you set your goals to. You want to meet your goals. And our emphasis was on those goals. probably heard SMART goals and those sort of setups where you set your time, you set your standards, and you meet those. And that's where it was really huge, where it was all about meeting your personal goals on a competitive level, where you're going on stage and yes, you have all the people in your weight class, but you are there to beat your previous max. You're there to do better than yourself from the last time you competed. And that whole mindset and that emphasis on that mindset was way different than any other coach or professional, or I guess competitive sport that I'd ever partook in. And I think that's why I got so much success from it, was that reframing.
SMART goals comes from goal setting theory by Locke and Latham. It's an acronym that represents specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And one of the things we find in research is that the more that we set goals that can align with more of those elements, the more likely people tend to be successful in achieving those goals. So similar like to we talking about some of the physical goals you might set for yourself, the more specific it can be, you can say like, I definitely wanted to do this. You know if you've achieved that goal or if you've achieved it in the right amount of time. And so we see people tend to be more successful when it's measurable and something that feels like it can be accomplished. Oftentimes, folks will set generic, vague goals for themselves, like I'm going to work out more, or I'm going to study really hard for the semester, and you don't know when you've achieved that, and so you don't feel a sense of accomplishment, so you don't feel motivated to keep going. You just see yourself like, well, I'm not as physically active as I wanted to be, or I didn't study as much as I maybe should have for a test. And so then we tend to struggle more in that space. But if you can say, nope, I did it, you get a good dopamine hit of happiness saying, I achieved a goal for the day. And we tend to be more successful when we've got that.
Yeah, Gavin, the powerlifting guy that I interviewed, when he didn't have any history of like powerlifting prior to college, but when he entered college, he joined the like Blue Devil lifting club because he wanted to go to the gym, but then as he spent more time there, that want to go to the gym transferred into like specific numbers that I want to hit on my squat, specific numbers that I want to hit on my bench, like meal prep and like setting all of that up, and that goal like evolved, like you said.
Yep, that would all be very specific goals, and so he knows when he's hitting them and he knows when he's not, and that creates a space of figuring out what do you need to do differently to hit that goal, or what's not reasonable about the goal that you set for yourself.
When you find a community that competes, that community is working towards improving and succeeding at something, which instantly creates bonds between people who are established members in a competitive scene and competition-driven people who have debuted in that scene. Eventually, if you learn to love the community that you've found yourself in, that love may create new opportunities for you outside of that club setting that you may not have known even existed. A surprising pattern that I noticed within the people that I talked to, as well as myself, was how these specific kinds of organizations had the ability to serve as gateways into other university-level programs.
When I started freshman year, I was kind of already talking with a lot of the people here at the club, and a lot of you guys had brought up that we do have that esports team. And then, ironically enough, the person who was leading at that time, Elliot, was a Minnesota rep, and in that Minnesota scene that I had already been involved in. So I kind of had connections to that already. And so by the time that I started, I had been talking with him a bit, and he's like, yeah, I know your skill level, I know you've been playing, I know you've been improving, we'd be happy to have you on the team. So went through the tryout format, all that good stuff, and honestly the rest is history. We started up in our kind of cruddy room in Heritage and evolved ever since that, and it's been very cool seeing that developed from a student coach to now a paid real coach, and having kind of some cruddy space that's just an abandoned classroom to having this really cool environment, and then having a team of like 4 people who were kind of just like, yeah, we play Smash Bros casually and like we play at the club, now to being like, hey, we're recruiting people and trying to get them here. And so seeing that grow as well is really cool, and I'm happy to keep playing for it until I graduate.
Has anyone ever made it onto Stout's women's soccer team through utilization of this club?
Like the regular,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure because most of the people that we've gotten is just people who aren't interested in varsity but interested in the club. Although our previous president, she was on the varsity team, but she quit to make this club and to help out other people who want to play soccer but just might not want to play at the varsity level. So I think that's kind of what we achieve. Although one of our players mentioned last semester that she would love to still play with us, but she's thinking of trying the varsity level. I hope it goes well for her.
So the Devilbots Brawl is a regional tournament that we set up as our club to host for high school teams from all around the US or even Canada or Mexico to come and compete at. This regional event gives these teams slots so they could attend the state championship if they perform well enough at our event. And we hosted about 27 different teams from all around the state, some from North Dakota, some from Minnesota, I believe, as well. And that was a full day thing Saturday in the MSC, and that was packed. I mean, it was busy. It was about 8 to 12 months of planning, all for one day.
So our first year doing it, and I think it went pretty well. So I'm looking forward to being able to run it again next year.
And that's all you guys, right? Like, that's not a part of the school.
Yeah. I mean, outside out was nice, but, you know, where are we going to buckle down and do it? We'll get it done.
If your identity is more of being an athletic person or a competitive person in nature, you're probably going to make sure that you are demonstrating that competitiveness, and so bringing more energy, bringing more focus to the activities you're doing. If you think about that competition in an academic type setting, we can think of it in, are you motivated to do well on exams, participate in class, be the first to answer questions, things like that. In your sports settings, that energy is probably going to look like more confidence when you're out in your sport performing. Maybe that leads into more confidence in leadership roles as being part of the team that you're on. One type of neuron in the brain is what's known as a mirror neuron, and this is one that is good at reflecting back to your brain what you see others doing. And so when we see somebody else doing an action, we can learn from them completing the action because our brain gives us messages and really gives us kind of bodily cues about what somebody else is doing or how they might be feeling. So it might be facial expressions in the emotions they're feeling, or it might be if you're trying to learn a technique to match with a physical sport, then how would you do that technique as well? And so your brain kind of activates to kind of stimulate initial learning or think about what are some of the differences. This also creates a space where we can activate feelings of senses of pain. So if you see somebody else get injured while performing a sport, you can think about a little bit what that would feel like to feel that pain. But that also means that when you're working on a team in a competitive environment, seeing the happiness of your teammates as they are successful or as they know they're doing something well in the sport might help make you feel more successful and driven as well, or being able to understand those feelings when you see the other team know they're not doing nearly as successfully as you. That can be activated to then respond on more excitement for yourself.
I've seen good clubs here take advantage of that. One of the cooler things that I've seen a club covered in this project do is the Blue Devil Robotics guys. They set up a whole event on campus called Devilbots Brawl.
Okay.
And basically what it is that they, it's like entirely student run, which is crazy considering the scope of it. They invite a bunch of high school robotics teams over to Stout, and then they do like, these high school kids are like working in teams and like doing robotics competitions here. And it's
That's
all
super cool.
like student run. And do you think that like those high schoolers like being able to be put into here and see, oh, this is like something that exists at a collegiate level, here's all these kids that I may be in like 3 years, they're doing what I'm doing now. Like, does that translate?
Absolutely. So that space where, if we go back to like the perceived identity, that space where you're trying to think about who you want to be in the future, seeing other people be successful, especially if there's folks of different identities that match you that you maybe don't have back at your own home school. You could see people who are older than you be successful and people who are similar to you be successful, and that gives you inspiration for what's kind of that next level change, because I'm guessing the types of robotics the high school has versus at the collegiate level. That shows you what's that next level that you should be striving for.
Notable involvement in student-organized competition enriches the student academically, competitively, and mentally. But an additional benefit that I hadn't even considered was how this form of competition and student expression directly benefits the programs and resources of the university they exist within. The longer this project went on, the more I realized that every organization featured here has given back to UW Stout's own programs and students in some capacity. It may seem like a drawback that these benefits require consistent time in the organization, but that hardly matters because these organizations are so prevalent in personal and educational lives. Once that connection is made between competitive club involvement and complex extracurricular development, this consistent involvement stops being an obligation and starts becoming motivated opportunity. This is the point in which the personal skills and opportunities created by competition really start to show themselves through leadership and ambition.
Ever since going into other clubs, I'm like, hey, yeah, if I'm not really putting my A game in, a lot of other people don't want to put their A game in, because realistically, like, if one person's not doing it, why would I want to? And so I've kind of just come into a lot of different clubs and environments and experiences with that mindset of, if I'm not putting my best foot forward, why should anyone else put their best foot forward? And so going into esports here at a college, it's been very interesting because we've always had some sort of coach in that role already. And I was thinking, well, I want to play so much, I don't really want to step down from that. But then the head coach and director, Aaron, when he brought up that there were opportunities for team captaining and kind of what that entails, that really clicked with how I want to present myself in these different spaces. I want to be able to give people that environment to improve, but also like coach them and help them while also being a friend and someone that is just part of the team, but wants everyone to take that step further and push something just a little bit further. And I think that really fit into the team captain role for the Smash Bros team.
How much more do you think you've benefited, like, professionally and like educationally from clubs that you've attended more, such as BDS?
I think as for BDS specifically, it's really good to write on a resume how much you're involved in a club. It shows a good amount of social ability, leadership ability, and different stuff like that, especially going into a kind of more social, competitive field, as in like animation and just business kind of as a whole. As for other clubs I've been involved in, the first one that kind of really comes to mind is Pepper Magazine here on campus. And that one is just more art-based, and it's really nice to have a club that you enjoy doing while also building artwork for a portfolio, which I definitely recommend as an artist. I think mostly it is building some sort of portfolio. It is very nice to kind of get out into a further field that isn't just education, but what's going to come after college. And so having even just that little sentence of social media manager for the Smash Bros Club at Stout is really impressive, because the fact that when you have 30 people showing up every week, you kind of get to say, yeah, I am standing out this way. And companies and businesses will look at that portfolio and kind of say, hey, this stands out a little bit more than this person. And the same thing with Pepper or any sort of art-based club. It will really help a portfolio because you are actively meeting with the people you want to meet with and these friends that you're talking to, but also building a portfolio and having something that's published out to a campus of thousands of people. So being able to get artwork and portfolio work and all this different stuff is really helpful to be able to build some sort of resume or portfolio. So I think overall it's nice to have portfolio work, whether that be on paper for stuff like leadership or social media managing, or images and photos for artwork. So I think it's just a good mix of all, and being involved in any sort of club can be very helpful for that.
Personally, yeah, I feel like I relate to that a lot, because I made like stingers for like BDS a while back, and that was something that I've thrown on my resume. Being able to like broadcast like all of our big like 70-person LAN tournaments is another thing that I like to be able to be like, hey, I can lead like productions, I can broadcast these big events. Here's a 70-person tournament that consisting of a bunch of people that just pulled up to our like Great Hall and all that. And I think that's pretty cool to have.
Yeah, just it's very cool to see like different mediums of art kind of being able to build a portfolio off of different things that you do. And if first you don't really think it's built towards a major, but a lot of the time different clubs like this need majors like art and video production to be able to form the biggest community possible, and I like that a lot.
Typically in a classroom setting, you're largely encouraged to complete assignments, homework, tests, things like that by your grades. And as a result, you're typically trying to do the bare minimum in order to accomplish a good enough grade. But you're not really encouraged to try and go above and beyond and be able to accomplish more than what you're actually required to. Then you're really not, you don't want to do your homework without assignments. You just won't have to in order to learn the concepts. With the competitive aspect of robotics, you're actually encouraged to spend more time to get something done right and being able to explore better ways of accomplishing something, because you're more encouraged and driven to do that by the aspect of competition. I think without robotics, both in high school and in university, I would not be in the same position I am. It has really encouraged my drive for computer science and programming in general. And it basically has given me 8 to 10 years of experience of programming that I otherwise would not have at all just coming out of college here.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, like through high school and coming into college, like thinking critically about like problems and finding creative solutions is definitely what we do here at Blue Dot Robotics. And without having the experience from this club, I don't think I would like leave college with the same like industry readiness that I would be with just like the standard coursework.
You guys think hobbies are like really good for like being able to make you feel more motivated for getting into like industry settings, right? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because that was back when I was in high school. I got into video production mainly because I was making all these YouTube videos. I've had a really enjoyable time being able to take that hobby and then turn it into a full-on video production major, and now, well, here we are.
I think for me, it determines where I can find like bitty gaps in how my ability to lead or ability to inspire other people is in my life, and I think that's something I always want to try and improve on, and I feel Blue Dot Robotics is a great way that I have the ability to take part in that, like lead a team, but then also have that feedback and try and always improve.
I think it's easy to see robotics as just, even because it's a STEM-focused program, you're really developing those hard skills, but I feel like it's often overlooks the different soft skills that you're developing as well. So having that amount of self-improvement, I feel like, is really helped a lot.
I just show up and just make robots. Like we're all here. I don't like to think of everyone as like on like a tier thing. Like it's all like we're all here. We're all here to build. We're all here to think. We're all here to create. Like let's buckle down and let's get rolling.
And do you think that aspect is like what makes people look up to you here?
I think so.
I have always struggled with leadership kind of stuff. It's always a balance between teaching others as well as being able to develop your own with oneself. But I feel like robotics has helped me kind of blindly walk through that maze.
So soft skills in the classroom would probably look like students' willingness to come and talk to the instructor, working with other students, engaging, not just kind of checking out and being on your phone, but working on interacting with other people, being willing to ask questions or answer questions outside of the classroom. This would look like maintaining good communication strategies in your digital communication with others, being timely and prompt, and just working to be a good teammate.
Do you believe that Blue Devil Lifting helped get you to the employment that you have now?
Yes, actually. The club involvement and just the culture of doing the sport was vital in making that decision, actually. And the biggest thing is that the sport itself was very, while it was team-based and we encouraged each other, it was also you versus yourself was kind of the big emphasis. And I realized that in almost like a big metaphor, that was my life in that moment, where, you know, why was I going to school versus what I wanted to really pursue. And I realized, not just in a physical sense, me competing with myself to be the best I can be, but it was also, I was competing against myself in my own goals and where I wanted to be in life. So it actually, yeah, as much as it was just a sport and a club, it really determined where I was going to go next, where I realized, wow, I made all this commitment and all this progress here, and I realized where I was lacking on the professional side, where I could apply that same logic and those same lessons there. And that's where I ended up.
I like you versus yourself a lot, just like how that can be utilized in clubs. Because I know, like, I'm a very avid like gym goer too, so I like to apply that mentality a lot. But then also in BDS too, because I'm always like competing against other people, and it's like I'm trying to improve myself in like that aspect of the game mentally. And then I think that like moved over into my classes too.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of clubs like these are able to like reinforce that kind of a mindset.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, they bring not just the team aspect, but there's so much of our world where it's, you know, you versus someone else. And while that can still be true, a lot of us lose sight of our personal goals and putting it into our own personal context in that way, where, you know, we want to be driven by ourselves, not necessarily because what everyone else is doing all the time. It's healthier to keep yourself as the center of focus in that way. Well, some of the biggest differences I notice, at least between classrooms and a club sport environment like that, is more of that crossover between individual achievement and teamwork. Whereas, at least how I think about it, when you're going through school, you have gym class and you have math class, where gym class, you might be all emphasis on a team, you're all working together. And then in math class, it's your test, your results. You know, did you study? No? Well, then that's really tough on your results. But at least in this team setting with lifting, it became like, yes, you as an individual, you met your goals, or you didn't, you worked hard, you went out late that one night and missed your opportunity. That, while that affects you majorly, those, if your team was depending on you to bring those numbers, or if the team was hoping you would meet your goals, but you didn't, then instead of a more direct punishment structure, maybe I'm more used to, like, from school, like, if you get a bad grade, that's your bad grade, you know. But if you don't perform to as much as you wanted to, or your close friend wanted you, that is a different form of, you know, disappointment. Or it's a different form of disappointment, where you put that more on yourself and you realize it's a more emotional level than just putting a statistic on it, in a very long-winded way to put it.
Competition and complex involvement are frequently used to supplement a student in an educational capacity that traditional coursework can't completely fulfill. Prior to college, I had many experiences in student bodies and athletics where competition didn't entirely apply to my coursework. But now, I'm able to use my specific field of study to mold the extracurricular life I enjoy around said field of study. Everyone I talked to was able to succeed in that avenue as well. This was an interesting way of thinking that I never spent much time studying prior to this project. While investigating this mentality, these findings led me to a concept known as serious leisure. Serious leisure can be defined as the dedicated and methodical pursuit of activities that individuals find meaningful, rewarding, and fulfilling, in which these activities involve a commitment to develop skills, knowledge, and a unique social identity within the activity. In my freshman and early sophomore years, I had participated in social and educational clubs such as a running club. Through these clubs, I found immediate social interaction, but it never stuck because the reward was instant and required little work for me to gain. This is a different concept known as casual leisure. This newly found existence of serious and casual leisure made me realize that every student organization ever fits into one or even both types of leisure.
So mostly I am pretty much only involved here in BDS, as well as just my major, animation, and esports as a whole, and a lot of those have more of a competitive feel to them. But as far as like just a casual space, I really like that BDS makes a good mix of both of those. It's both casual and available for casual players, as well as competitive for some of the more competitive players. And with their plethora of events going on, they constantly have stuff that's available for people that play more casually and people who play more competitively. For example, I'll play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate competitively and try my best and typically make it a bit far there, but for the other events that I'm not so familiar with, I'll typically play more casually, and that'll just be a fun experience and a fun little one-off.
Using the running club as an example, my spot and motives in the community were solidified instantly. I had to show up to the meeting spot, run, relax, have a nice conversation, and see them next time. I didn't need to work hard to maintain my spot in this community. It was a social setting that used running as a vehicle, which means that the barrier to entry was low, but my ceiling of potential in the club was also very low. This is not meant to be a knock on those clubs, since casual leisure-focused organizations do fulfill a purpose for university students. This is especially the case if those students are new, but these organizations don't provide the maximum opportunity that serious leisure-focused organizations can. To contrast the previous example, BDS was a fun and challenging environment with high payoff for my social and professional life, but I needed to consistently show up and work hard to reap the benefits of that payoff. It's also important to note that I'm not just showing up to improve by just competing against other people. I'm showing up to improve by competing against myself as well, which is a concept that is still very present when aspects of student competition exclude sport. In the perspective of my own experience, if I wanted to use BDS to make resume work as well as gain experience in broadcasting, management, and leadership, I needed to consistently show up to earn those opportunities. If I wanted to compete like I've never competed before to train my mental resilience and stamina, I needed to consistently show up to test that strength. If I wanted to build a legacy that I could pass down to the people who will pick up where I left off, I needed to consistently show up to build that legacy. At the end of the day, I did consistently show up. I did reap these benefits, and it never felt like an obligation because the existence of serious leisure within BDS made me want to do all of those things. Although they have importance and value, this is a dimension of complexity and accomplishment that casual social organizations fundamentally lack.
So the act of working together in teams can make a huge difference for learning how to work in other professional settings with communicating well with others, understanding kind of the empathy side of what other people need in a team sport or in a team dynamic at work. Just the ability to manage your time and work towards achieving personal goals and kind of identifying what those goals would be to improve for yourself.
How may mental resilience be influenced by competition?
Mental resilience, oftentimes in psychology, is referred to as grit, and so your ability to stay focused and push through challenges. The space where you're in competition mode, there might be higher motivation to keep going. You can see yourself improving or growing relative to others who are working, or you can see yourself working with a team, and so while your teammates are growing and improving, you're more motivated to also grow and improve as well, whereas that feeling of potential failure or hardship is kind of balanced by that encouragement from the teammates that you have.
Personally, I've had to learn how to be more resilient mentally through cross country and track because I'm running and it's such a simple task that it all goes to your head and the pain and the endurance that you need. another person I talked to, he was a competitive powerlifter in a club here, and since that's also more individual, even though it's in like a team setting, he's like needs to focus on like pushing through his barriers and being able to lift the weight that he needs to lift for himself and for the others. And do you think that like what you talked about can be translated into like a physical sense as well?
Absolutely, particularly in a physical sense, having kind of clear markers of what your goal is that you're trying to achieve or what was your past performance, and so you can easily see when you're not doing as strongly for whatever reason on a particular day, and then you have that extra motivation to try harder, and that practice can then translate to other aspects of your life where you keep trying harder and keep pushing through even on those tough days. I think just the level of focus that you bring to the activity can drastically change in that space, and so if you're there more casually, your mindset might be a little bit more distracted on other things that are going on in your day. But if you're in that competition mode, kind of like you said, with the focus of not letting yourself down but also not letting your team down as well, that can help keep that focus on the performance, and so pushing yourself to do better than you would have otherwise.
In a lot of other social clubs, they will have tasks, projects, things to work on, but it doesn't have the same amount of drive or encouragement or complete that, because you're working on this thing, kind of learn how it works, but there's no actual reason to get it. There's no actual purpose to it at the end. Meanwhile, in robotics here, you are working as a team towards a common goal. You're actually competing in the end of it.
Additionally, serious leisure can be credited for building structure and identity outside of a classroom setting. As stated earlier, developmental goals through serious leisure don't just include academic progression and professional foresight. The drive to develop a strong identity also stems from serious leisure-based activities. My involvement at BDS helped prolong the athletic and competitive identity that I have been proud to wear for years, and when I extended that involvement into university athletics, that gave me a practice schedule and routine that was absent since my final days in track. That gave me structure that has followed me outside of school. Many people like me owe it to organizations such as that for allowing the identity of us at our grittiest, purest, and most hungry mental state to continue to survive. How involved are you with BDS compared to other student orgs?
I think I am definitely involved with BDS the most out of any other student organization here on campus. I think the only kind of exceptions would be my major and esports, which I wouldn't consider very typical student orgs, if student orgs at all. But BDS is definitely my most involved, and I was much more involved as an exec. But even as just a member that comes in and plays every week, it's very nice to have that kind of space and go somewhere every week and have some sort of routine with that.
Honestly, the biggest door it opened for me, definitely not in a literal sense, was my own ability to persevere. It unlocked in me, or at least allowed me to see my own capabilities, and the doors that it opened. Basically, to simple it down, is the confidence, right? Simply just being able to say, here's what I want, and I know I can get it, or I know I can achieve it. And taking that with me and basically tackling my career again, because I had a few years of plumbing beforehand, and I wasn't very deliberate with my actions or how I was living my life. And I realized that everything I do every single day, I could be more deliberate. And that was the biggest takeaway from lifting, was that everything I can do can be growth for myself. And that would be my biggest takeaway by far.
Like it gave you more of like a structure in your day-to-day life.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it took things that I thought, I could get to that or do whatever. Don't really have to have that plan or that structure. Realize, no, that's, it's needed. It really is. Especially for someone like me, I needed that structure. I mean, in high school and emphasis is really on relationships, or I always felt like everyone, you know, you want to be friends with everybody. You've got, it was a lot more superficial. Like for me, and like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't living or being super deliberate about my trajectory, just kind of, as my dad would say, floating through life. And same with people, just kind of meeting people and so on and so forth. But that really changed as you get into transitioning from high school to college. You've got that professional aspect where, okay, now I am in charge of paying my bills, moving myself forward. That structure goes away right after high school, and then college kind of brings that back again. And in those ebbs and flows of structure, no structure, it really puts into perspective, like, I really have to lock in and hold on to what I have, because you know, you let it slack or you let it slide and you lose those opportunities, you lose literal money, you lose a lot of things. So that transition, or that learning phase between high school through end of college, really put into perspective that while I can still have fun and let things slide every now and then, by and large, you gotta stay diligent, you gotta stay on top of what you need to do, and drive forward. And that kind of describes my post-college experiences, that after I left college at 22 or 23 years of age, and I realized, you know, I tried all these different things, tried college, tried trades, tried this. So now that I've tried, I really have to stick to what I do next, which I jumped right back into plumbing, got into a union position, and you know, I'm sticking with it as my career. And that transition from college to what I would say is locking in on my adulthood, that's really been pivotal in my direction now.
And do you think that lifting helped like give you that kind of discipline?
Yeah, 100%. Just that individual growth, you know, not just setting the physical goals of physical lifts and numbers, but putting that same logic everywhere else. Is, well, why am I, you know, doing this when I should be practicing this? Putting up, you know, things that changed as I got a calendar locked in. I make lists for things I need to do now, like I would make lists of, you know, meal planning and goals for actual lifting. I started doing that just even in my more casual sides of life, and the results are tremendous.
What do you see in the minds of people who are great at creating or maintaining structure and schedule in their day-to-day life?
Having structure in your day-to-day life really helps create a sense of focus and mindfulness while you're in the activities. If you have many things you need to do, it can be easier to stay on task in the moment, because you know you don't have a lot of time for your mind to wander to other things. And so folks can be potentially more productive because they have that structure. And I oftentimes hear students talk about when they have more activities in their day-to-day, they feel much more focused on their homework and more successful when they're doing that, preparing for job interviews and everything else in their life.
It is important to acknowledge the fact that serious leisure doesn't just instantly appear in these kinds of settings. An incentive must be present to form a personal need for serious leisure in this kind of environment. When you go to university, everything is new and change is inevitable. When you view yourself in a position where your social settings and dynamic are changing, you tend to approach communities in new and different ways. This is when I started wondering how self-perception, as well as the changing of identities and communities leading into university settings, were able to help create new homes and responsibilities for these people.
And since you guys did play soccer in high school, when you guys graduated from high school, did you ever believe that there was a chance that your life participating in soccer was coming to an end, and how did that make you feel?
A little bit. I knew I didn't want to play varsity because I didn't have the greatest experiences in high school with my team. So it kind of helped me stray away a little bit, but I knew that at some point I wanted to come back, even if it wasn't for varsity. So I was really hoping we had a club or something here, and thankfully we did.
I definitely thought, I was sad about it, but I definitely thought that after I graduated high school and I finished up my senior season that was gonna be it, because at that point, like, I had no knowledge of our club team, and the last time I had checked up on it, it didn't exist. So when we started, that was the first year that it was going. So as far as I knew, I was done with soccer, because I was kind of in the same boat as Kay. I did not want to do varsity. I had other things I wanted to be able to focus on and not just soccer, and they have a much more rigorous schedule than a club team does, so I just didn't see myself, I saw myself burning out if I were to join varsity and still have the same workload and same class load as I do right now. So yeah, when I graduated high school, it made me sad to think that I was probably done with soccer. And then I was very happy when I found out that I was not, in fact.
I think it molds my personality quite a bit, because if it didn't, then I don't think I would truly be my own self if I was out there on the field, without it, of course, molding my personality. Because I try to be the most myself as possible out there, and also show these people, like, this is who I am. Like, I'm not putting up a front of who you want me to be, or I'm not gonna pretend to be this, like, stuck up leader that is like, you need to do everything by the book. No, I'm going to be lenient because that is who I am, as a person.
I feel like it really adds to my character, because it gives me a chance to get out and talk to people, because otherwise it's school, homework, and then my job. So it really gives me a chance to, like, go out and be vulnerable with a bunch of other people who have the same interests as me, and we're just out there to socialize and have fun. And at the end of the day, I feel like that really just helps me mold my character and keeps me from just, like, boxing myself into my routine.
In high school, I competed in robotics. It's the same program, Vector Robotics, for high school, from 8th grade all the way through my senior year of high school. So the dynamics stay pretty much the same. However, it's more focused now on teamwork and actually incorporating a bigger crew size, and then having that ability to build 2 robots versus 1. So that's kind of more leadership and more team focused.
I did FIRST Robotics for about 5 years. It's very similar to Vex Robotics. It had a lot of that same sort of competitive dynamic with it, except, like Aiden said, you are doing a lot more of that leadership stuff here, because it is very much more student focused here at university level, as opposed to in high school, when you're a lot more reliant on mentors, teachers, and other adult leaders in order to help guide you towards the solution.
How did you use your leadership in level lifting to make it like a successful competitive environment?
Well, I've come from previous leadership roles that I really enjoyed, helping other people and just illustrating, well, I guess, yeah, helping other people in all types of ways. So previously I was in scouting and Future Farmers of America and those kind of leadership positions. And how that helped me in lifting is, once I took on the treasurer role, but just an executive role in the club, it really allowed me to, it really put the pressure on me to perform and commit more to myself, because now I'm a role model, so to speak, or at least new members will look up to me for questions and how to pursue their own goals. So that really helped me not just put it as a, you know, we're focusing on your progress as an individual. That really brought it back to, while that's important, we still help each other out, we still look up to each other and translate the leadership around.
Like, present yourself the way you want everyone else to.
The golden rule, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your brain and your body are all muscles, and if you're not using them, you're going to lose them. And so staying engaged in your physical activities is going to keep your body strong. It's going to help you as you get older in your life to be able to do more things the longer that you want to. Same thing with your brain, keeping your brain active, whether that's doing competitive things or doing other mentally engaging things, will keep your brain active and able to keep persisting longer and enjoy your life more fully.
And I think that's very good to acknowledge too, because there have been people that I've interviewed who participated in like varsity sports, such as like me for like track and women's soccer. Was a couple people I interviewed, part of the women's soccer club, who used that as an avenue to continue competing after deciding that they weren't going to transfer from high school varsity to like a collegiate official team. There's like guys who run the robotics club here who did like robotics competitions in high school that took that and transferred it into a club setting here on campus, and that's good. I think that's very good to acknowledge, being able to continue to exercise those skills and those like athletic capabilities by transferring them into university settings.
Absolutely. Keeps that sense of identity that you had when you were younger as you're shifting into your more adult careers and kind of the focuses of college life. It likely helps keep folks grounded too in something that was meaningful for them before, as they're trying new things and pushing themselves in new ways in their degrees.
Role transition is something that everyone experiences at some point in their lives. Role transition can be defined as a psychological and/or physical movement between positions in a social system, encompassing disengagement from one role and subsequent engagement in another. Singular events may happen that cause shifts in personal roles, such as the changing of friendships, gained leadership positions, job acquisition, and the changing of social relationships by force due to the person's relocation of homes. Situations such as that are avoidable, since not everyone will move away from home while growing up, and not everyone makes edits to their social circle. However, it is inevitable that we all grow up, get older, gain new social statuses, and outgrow core pieces of our social lives, which forces us to leave those comfortable spaces. Because of this, college students, especially former high school athletes, have a notoriously difficult time when faced with the adversity of role transition. This is mainly because an actual transition amongst athletics rarely exists. Only about 6% of high school seniors continue playing their sports in college. The other 94 leaves that life behind. Even though I was lucky enough to interview individuals who were part of that 6%, even they had complications playing at the highest level offered. When it came to the other 94, their transition may be a difference in competitive outreach and expression, like what happened to me. This is also a difficult development to make, and I'm happy that I was able to do it despite not being that 6%. Loss is practically inevitable with these odds. If you continued in your sport post-high school, you had to have expressed significant time, effort, and identity into that sport in those high school years. Additionally, your time in your sport was just as limited as the people who didn't continue. This is significant because research has backed the fact that the more your high school sport is a part of your identity, the more loss you feel when your time in high school is up. However, the more loss an individual experienced in this kind of a scenario, the more life satisfaction they received when participating in recreational competition. When individuals have that competitive outlet to experience after a big shift in their life and its roles, they gain more fulfillment from that. There's a term for this known as continuity theory. This line of thinking claims that people are mentally and physically healthier when they continue to participate in competition that had been prominent earlier in their lives. While this theory is more frequently applied to middle-aged and senior individuals, this same concept is supported in recreational competitive activity amongst university students that have recently transitioned. Development is pivotal, unpredictable, and life-altering. As I expanded my perspective outside of my own, I realized that my dilemma mentioned at the beginning of this project was a byproduct of this exact concept. I wasn't nervous about leaving high school. I was a bad student, undisciplined, and I needed a reset. I wasn't scared of not having access to a competitive community anymore. I met one before I was even a student, and I wasn't afraid of becoming more of a leader. I was already a cross-country captain. I feared the inevitability of my role transition. I feared the steps it would take to develop a mentality that allowed me to grow beyond who I currently was. I had largely shifted social roles that made me nervous about who I may become, as well as start thinking about how I could shift my persona into someone that me at the time would be able to look up to in 4 years. This mentality of changing goals, traits, and ambitions based on the identity or character that you are portraying or working towards portraying is a concept that has existed for quite some time. Could you explain what the Proteus effect is?
Oh, the Proteus effect is this idea, oftentimes that one's more related to video game characters, and so the avatar that you are portraying or playing as in a game, it would be really the stereotypes of how you see that character being, how they should behave, and then you tend to adopt those types of personas, and so you might act more deviously if you're playing a bad guy character, or you might act more heroically, or you might start saying more heroic statements if you're doing heroic things. I actually had a student recently who's very nice and very polite and sweet in every other space, but they shared that they tend to play bad guys in this one game, and they found that there was this cheat code in the game, and they actually got themselves banned from the game because in that one context they had adopted the villain character, which would fit that Proteus effect.
And do you believe that this concept can exist in real life, such as like a classroom persona or a competition or club persona?
Absolutely. There's actually a term for it in social psychology called the self-perception theory. And so we can kind of adopt a persona of what we think we want to be or what we need to be in the situation, where if you're up for a job interview and you want to be more confident, so you like sit a little bit taller and straighter, and so you portray this strength that you want to show in the situation.
And do you think you can claim that like those same like traits that would be shown in like a competitive setting would be able to like positively influence a person's character, like maybe even outside of that competition?
Competition's kind of an interesting space. It can have some positive and negatives. Definitely the space where you're focused on pushing yourself and achieving or encouraging your team and pushing as part of a team can definitely lead to a lot of positive aspects. The space where winning is the only thing that matters can lead to some detriments mentally, potentially, if you're not achieving those goals, or in some cases can lead to more maladaptive behaviors in how you interact with other people if it's for the win more than being part of the team or growing as an individual.
So I think it's good to like focus for clubs to focus on like in the like a winning like scenario to like focus more on like individual progress.
Absolutely.
For its members. Yeah.
So there's a theory of growth mindset where if we focus more on the effort that was put in something as a more of the achievement at the end, that tends to actually lead to more happiness and more success and more willingness to persist. When we focus on just the win, it really kind of obfuscates all the work that put into it. And if we just feel like, well, we're just naturally good at it, so we won because we just happen to be the best. When you experience failure, you don't know how to adjust to it. But if the focus is on, we put in the work together as a team, you put all this effort in to be successful, then that can encourage continued growth and continued inspiration to try harder and push yourself even more in the future.
I could now use the general process of role transition and the successful reshaping of a person's identity to find the blueprint of effective competition and social dynamics within an effective student organization. And ultimately, I also saw their impact on the personal lives of those involved.
I think I use quite a lot of aspects because it's starting to get into like flag football season, and I might not be like a president or like a captain or anything there. I'm just a regular old player there. I like to use like how I am with my teammates with the club soccer. That's how I am there at practice too. It's like the same old me. And it's like hope to use the teamwork and the sportsmanship that I've learned from our club team into the actual flag football team as well, of being nice to everyone and like helping out all my other players. If someone gets injured, like I'm there for them.
I feel like for me, it's a lot of the teamwork that carries through. So kind of on the same vein that Kay was talking. Like I said, I'm in early childhood education. We do a lot of collaborative work amongst like other future teachers that we have class with every day. So whether it's like making lesson plans or kind of coming up with activities to run in the childhood development center, we do a lot of teamwork and a lot of collaboration, and I feel like I have the soccer team to thank for that, just to be able to have some perspective, I feel like.
I mean, as a programmer, I live, breathe, walk, and code pretty much. So I have basically used the skills I learned here in my day-to-day life directly through programming. And that goes back to the hard skills and soft skills as well, having that teamwork and collaboration as well comes along with that.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of like the design work I do is really what I do for my job and what I want to do in the future, and like working on robotics as well. Like it translates one-to-one, like especially with what I do here and what I do at work is pretty much identical.
And what was your job?
I work at Shape Products as an engineering intern, working on giant robotic arms, cutting out window wall covers. Wow. So,
I mean, originally going into it, I just wanted to be more consistent with going to the gym. I wasn't really sure about powerlifting or any of that as a sport. I just kind of wanted to get big and lose weight and be strong. So, and while I learned so much more and gained so much more value out of just the shallow, ooh, I want to look good, I still achieved some of those personal goals of being strong and being healthier. All those methods of perseverance, and you know, when you're pushing out that last rep, you want to give up, you want to fail, but executing to the last bit is it's a weird mental hurdle that takes practice and takes time to get over, but really pushing yourself to that last ounce of energy. And I work in a physical career now, so I can more literally apply those methods, but also applying it to things that are mentally uncomfortable. Because in lifting or any sport, a lot of athletes, I feel like, come to the realization that even though there is physical pain, it is still a mental game. It is still a mental challenge you're working over. So taking the muscle pain out of it and just applying it to other uncomfortable things like paperwork or long processes with work and all that, it helps you get through those a lot easier too.
Cross country, I was a big cross country track guy back in high school, and a lot of people are like, I pride myself on being like a 2-sport varsity athlete back then, but it's like, oh, but you're just running. And it's like fundamentally like a really simple sport, because you're like, other than like doing hurdles, you're like basically doing the same thing. It's left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. But because you're doing that like one simple action, all of like the brain power and effort that goes into like physicality instead goes up into your head. And then you gotta more persevere mentally.
Yeah, simple in concept, but hard to master.
Yeah.
You know, people discount the amount of effort it takes to do that long term and to really stick with it. Yeah.
Like clockwork, everyone I had talked to had expressed their involvement in competitive organizations in a way that followed this concept and its processes. Just like my own experiences, these were all people who were able to utilize the involved and complex foundation of competitive organizations to adjust into their new university lives. I felt that this was the large connecting piece. This connection and the presence that these kinds of organizations are able to have on the lives of their participants are what allowed them to give students the unique benefits that have been discussed. I spent the summer of 22 expecting that I need to overhaul everything about my being, and I wasn't that far off in retrospect. My cross-country life was over. My track life was over. I knew I couldn't commit to my creative passion to a degree that I currently did anymore, and I'd hit a wall of maturity that was terrifying to surmount. I was now at a constant battle in my head between maintaining what made me me, while also needing to change my core values and principles so I would be ready for adulthood. It's very important to have an outlet that allows you to figure out that phase of development in your life while allowing that development to occur in a loving environment that constantly pushes you to be better. Blue Devil Smash was mine. It served as my gateway back into an athletic program. It gave me professional practice and work that I never would have found in a job or a classroom. It gave me a fresh set of people to share my interests with. It gave me leadership experience that allowed me to gladly give back to the community. It gave me the ability to fight for something. It gave me the ability to express the competitive soul I thought I lost. And most importantly, it allowed Ben to be Ben in the same vein that everyone else involved in this project was able to express themselves. The craziest part is that I didn't travel at all for this project. I didn't need to leave my campus to find these outlets. Every organization I featured used competition to spread their community out across northern Wisconsin, the entirety of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and even throughout North America. The source of all of that is Menominee, Wisconsin, a city that isn't even in the top 50 of Wisconsin's most populated cities. Imagine the outreaching competitive communities that you can find in bigger areas with bigger student bodies. A degree takes a lot out of you. It takes your time, your money, your sleep, and your strength. But if you look deep enough into yourself, find the right communities, and play your cards right, what supplements your degree may give you the drive to develop into a world ready to be changed by you.